Be me, Brenda, 34, Human Resources Director at this tech company. Been working here for 6 years, finally made it to the top of the department. Company has about 200 employees, decent size, good benefits. My job is basically to make sure everything runs smoothly and everyone gets treated fairly, which obviously means making sure historically marginalized groups get the opportunities they deserve. Tired of watching qualified women and minorities get passed over for mediocre men. Time to level the playing field. Start implementing some strategic hiring practices. Whenever we have openings, I make sure the candidate pools reflect proper diversity. If we're looking at 5 candidates and 3 are men, I know something's wrong with our process. Begin subtly steering conversations during hiring meetings. I just think we need to consider whether this candidate would really fit our culture. Are we sure this person would be collaborative enough for our team dynamic? Somehow, the men keep falling through while women and minorities advance. Weird how that works out. Been doing this for about 2 years now. Company culture has definitely improved. Women's voices are finally being heard in meetings. People of color are getting promoted to leadership positions. This is what real progress looks like. Some of the older male employees seem frustrated, but change is always uncomfortable. They'll adapt or find somewhere else to work. Then there's Scott, 35 years old, senior software engineer, been with the company for 4 years. Technically competent, I'll give him that. But he has this attitude that just rubs me the wrong way. Always questioning decisions, always pushing back on new initiatives. Classic example of someone who's used to having everything handed to him. Scott keeps getting passed over for promotions. Applied for team lead position twice in the past year. Both times we went with better candidates. First time was Marcus, who brought fresh perspectives and had great ideas about inclusive development practices. Second time was Jennifer, who had excellent communication skills and would clearly be better at mentoring junior developers. Scott didn't take either decision well, keeps asking for specific feedback about his performance. Like I have time to coddle his ego. Notice Scott's been getting more vocal in meetings lately, questioning budget allocations for our diversity and inclusion training, making comments about merit-based decisions, using those coded phrases that really mean, I don't think women and minorities deserve opportunities. His whole demeanor screams entitlement, acts like he's owed something just for showing up and doing his job adequately. Decide it's time to start documenting Scott's problematic behavior. Begin noting instances where he's not fully supportive of team initiatives. When Jennifer suggested we use more inclusive language in our code comments, Scott said it was unnecessary. When Marcus proposed a new algorithm that would reduce bias in our recommendation system, Scott said it was over-engineered. Clearly not a team player, creating a hostile environment for his colleagues. Call Scott into my office for a performance review meeting. Lay out my concerns in professional terms. Scott, I've noticed some patterns in your recent interactions with team members. There seems to be resistance to collaborative approaches and new perspectives. This company values innovation and inclusion, and I need to see more alignment with those principles. Scott looks confused, starts asking for specific examples. What exactly are you referring to, Brenda? Can you give me concrete instances? Classic deflection tactic. Trying to make me do all the emotional labor of explaining why his behavior is problematic. It's not about isolated incidents, Scott. It's about overall patterns and team dynamics. I need to see more openness to feedback and more support for initiatives that benefit everyone. Scott's getting visibly frustrated now. I've always been open to feedback. I've consistently delivered quality work ahead of deadlines. My code reviews are thorough. I help junior developers. I've never had any formal complaints. Still not getting it. Thinks this is just about technical performance, completely missing the bigger picture about workplace culture. Scott, this isn't just about code. It's about being a supportive colleague and embracing our company values. I'm going to need to see significant improvement in these areas moving forward. Place him on a 90-day performance improvement plan. Clearly outline expectations about collaborative behavior and cultural alignment. Scott stares at the document like he can't believe what he's reading. Brenda, this is incredibly vague. What specific actions do you want me to take? How am I supposed to measure embracing company values? Over the next few weeks, Scott actually seems to be trying, participating more in meetings, asking questions about diversity initiatives. But there's something fake about it. Can tell he's just going through the motions. Doesn't actually believe in what we're trying to accomplish here. Still has that underlying resistance, that entitled attitude. Probably thinks if he plays along for 90 days, everything will go back to normal. Meanwhile, I'm getting pressure from above about department efficiency. Chief Executive Officer wants to see some cost-cutting measures. Perfect opportunity to address the Scott situation. He's one of the higher-paid engineers, and his attitude problems make him a liability. Much better to invest in people who actually support our mission. Call Scott in for his final review. Been exactly 89 days since we started the improvement plan. Scott, I've been monitoring your progress over these past 3 months. While I've seen some surface-level changes, I don't feel like there's been genuine growth in the areas we discussed. Scott immediately tenses up. What do you mean? I've participated in every diversity training session. I've been collaborative in all my project work. My recent peer reviews have been positive. It's not about checking boxes, Scott. It's about authentic engagement with our workplace culture. I still sense resistance to the changes we're implementing here. This company is moving in a direction that requires everyone to be fully committed to our values. Pull out the termination paperwork. I've decided to end your employment effective immediately. Scott's face goes completely white. Sits there in silence for probably 10 seconds. Then starts speaking in this low, controlled voice that's somehow more unsettling than yelling would be. Brenda, I need you to explain to me exactly what I've done wrong. Because I've followed every guideline you've given me. I've met every technical requirement of my job. I've been professional with all my colleagues. Scott, this really isn't about any single action. It's about fit and cultural alignment. Sometimes these things just don't work out, and that's okay. We'll provide you with a standard severance package and positive references for future opportunities. Try to keep things professional and supportive. No need to make this more difficult than it needs to be. But Scott's not accepting this gracefully. Leans forward in his chair, voice getting louder. No, Brenda, that's not good enough. I want specifics. What cultural misalignment? What resistance? You keep using these vague terms that don't mean anything. I've done my job better than most people in this company. Scott, I understand you're upset, but this decision has been made. I'd appreciate it if we could handle this transition professionally. Scott stands up abruptly. Professional? You want to talk about professional? You've been targeting me from day one because I don't fit whatever narrative you have in your head. This has nothing to do with my performance or my attitude. This is about you wanting to get rid of people who don't look like your preferred candidates. Completely inappropriate accusations. Scott's showing his true colors now. This is exactly why he needed to go. Scott, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down. These accusations are unfounded and frankly offensive. This decision was made based on legitimate business and cultural considerations. Scott laughs, but there's no humor in it. Cultural considerations. Right. Is that what we're calling discrimination now? Signal for security to come up. Scott's clearly becoming unstable. Not surprised, this is how he's handling rejection. Typical response from someone who's never been held accountable before. I think it's best if you gather your personal items and leave the building. Security will escort you to ensure a smooth transition. Scott stares at me for a long moment. This isn't over, Brenda. You've made a serious mistake. I'm not going to just disappear quietly while you destroy people's lives. Security arrives and Scott leaves without further incident, but there was something in his voice that was genuinely threatening. Might need to document this interaction in case he tries to cause problems later. Few weeks pass. Everything goes back to normal. Scott's replacement is Maria, fantastic hire with great energy and fresh perspectives. She's already contributed more innovative ideas than Scott did in his entire tenure. Team dynamics are so much better without his negative presence. Proves my decision was absolutely correct. Then start getting calls from some lawyer. Keeps leaving messages about investigating potential workplace discrimination claims. Obviously, Scott hired someone to try to intimidate us. Waste of his money because we followed all proper procedures. Everything was documented. Everything was legitimate. He has absolutely no case. Finally, take the lawyer's call just to get it over with. Guy named David sounds young and overeager. Ms. Brenda, I'm representing Scott in a potential employment discrimination case. We're conducting a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding his termination. I'd like to schedule a time to discuss the matter with you. David, I appreciate the call, but there really isn't anything to discuss. Scott was terminated for legitimate performance and cultural fit reasons. All proper procedures were followed, and the decision was well documented. If Scott wants to pursue legal action, that's his choice, but he won't find any wrongdoing on our part. David doesn't seem deterred. We've been reviewing employment records and noticed some interesting patterns in hiring and promotion decisions over the past few years. Would you be able to explain the rationale behind some of these personnel choices? Fishing expedition, trying to find something that isn't there. All our hiring and promotion decisions are based on qualifications and merit. We take equal opportunity very seriously at this company. I'm confident any review will show we've acted appropriately. Hang up feeling annoyed but not worried. Scott's just wasting everyone's time and money. Probably thinks he can pressure us into some kind of settlement. Not happening. We did everything by the book. Couple weeks later, get another call from David. This time he sounds more serious. Ms. Brenda, we've completed our initial investigation and found some concerning patterns. Over the past 2 years, men have been terminated or denied promotion at significantly higher rates than women. We're prepared to file a class action lawsuit alleging systematic discrimination. Complete nonsense. Probably looked at raw numbers without considering context. David, I think you're misinterpreting normal business decisions as something discriminatory. We've been working to create a more inclusive workplace, which sometimes means making difficult personnel choices. But those choices are always based on legitimate business factors. You're seeing patterns where none exist. We have documentation of specific comments made during hiring meetings, notes about candidates' cultural fit that seem to correlate strongly with gender. We also have testimony from several current and former employees about hostile work environment issues. Feeling a slight knot in my stomach. Who's been talking to this lawyer? I don't know what you think you have, but I'm confident our company has acted within all legal boundaries. If you want to proceed with some kind of frivolous lawsuit, that's your decision. But you should know we'll fight it vigorously. David pauses for a moment. Ms. Brenda, I think you should take this more seriously. We have a very strong case. I'd encourage you to discuss this with your legal team before we file. Immediately call our company lawyer after hanging up. Explain the situation, emphasize that everything we did was legitimate. Michael sounds concerned, though. Brenda, these discrimination cases can be very tricky. Even if we ultimately prevail, they're expensive and time-consuming to defend. Are you absolutely certain there's no substance to their claims? Michael, I've been in human resources for over a decade. I know employment law. Every decision we made had legitimate business justifications. This is just a disgruntled employee trying to get a payday. Michael doesn't sound entirely convinced. I'll need to review all the relevant personnel files and documentation. In the meantime, make sure you preserve all records related to hiring and promotion decisions. Spend the next few days pulling together files, reviewing notes from hiring meetings and performance reviews. Everything looks fine to me. Decisions were based on qualifications and cultural fit. Nothing discriminatory about wanting employees who support company values. Week later, Michael calls with an update. Brenda, I've reviewed the materials, and I have some concerns. There are some patterns in the data that could be problematic, and some of the language in your meeting notes might be interpreted unfavorably. What's he talking about? Michael, can you be more specific? What patterns? Over the past 2 years, you've terminated or denied promotion to 73% of the male candidates under consideration. Female and minority candidates have been promoted at significantly higher rates. While individual decisions might be justified, the overall pattern could suggest bias. Those numbers sound worse than they actually are. Michael, you have to look at the context of each decision. We've been trying to address historical inequities in our industry. Sometimes that means being more intentional about supporting underrepresented groups. Brenda, I understand the motivation, but legally speaking, intentionally favoring one group over another can still constitute discrimination, even if the intention is to correct historical imbalances. The law requires equal treatment regardless of gender or race. This is so frustrating, trying to do the right thing and getting attacked for it. A few days later, the lawsuit gets filed. David wasn't bluffing. It's not just Scott anymore. 5 other former male employees have joined as plaintiffs, alleging systematic discrimination in hiring, promotion, and termination decisions, seeking damages and demanding changes to company policies. Local Business Journal picks up the story. Emergency meeting with Chief Executive Officer and executive team. Everyone's looking at me like this is somehow my fault. Brenda, can you walk us through how we got to this point? I thought our human resources practices were legally compliant. Chief Executive Officer sounds frustrated and worried. They are legally compliant. This is just a group of disgruntled employees trying to get money. We've been working to create a more inclusive workplace, and apparently some people can't handle that. I'm confident we'll prevail in court. Chief Financial Officer jumps in with cost concerns. Brenda, even if we win, this is going to be expensive to defend, and the negative publicity could hurt our business significantly. Over the next few weeks, more details about the lawsuit become public. Scott's lawyer somehow got hold of internal emails and meeting notes, taking completely innocent comments out of context, making it sound like we had some kind of conspiracy against male employees. Local news stations pick up the story. Suddenly, we're being portrayed as this discriminatory company. Start getting hostile emails and phone calls at work. People accusing me personally of being a man-hater and worse. Completely unfair characterization. I've always treated everyone with respect and professionalism. This is just what happens when you try to challenge existing power structures. People who benefit from inequality get angry when you try to level the playing field. Michael keeps pushing for settlement discussions. Brenda, their evidence is stronger than I initially thought. They have recorded conversations and detailed documentation. A jury might find their claims convincing. What recorded conversations? Michael, what are you talking about? What recordings? Apparently, Scott wore a recording device during his final few meetings with you. They have audio of your termination conversation and several other interactions. Feel like the floor just dropped out from under me. Is that legal? Can he record conversations without permission? This is a one-party consent state, so yes, it's legal. And some of the statements on those recordings are problematic. Demand to hear the recordings myself. Michael plays them in his office, hearing my own voice discussing Scott's cultural alignment issues, talking about how he needed to be more supportive of initiatives that benefit everyone, discussing his resistance to collaborative approaches. It sounds bad taken out of context, but those were legitimate concerns about his attitude and team dynamics. Brenda, a jury is going to hear those recordings and see a pattern of targeting, combined with the statistical evidence about gender-based disparities in your decisions. This could be a very expensive loss for the company. Still think we can fight this. Michael, those recordings prove we followed proper procedures. I gave Scott clear feedback and opportunities for improvement. Everything was documented and professional. The problem is what's not said explicitly. When you talk about cultural fit and collaborative approaches, while the data shows you're systematically rejecting male candidates, it creates an inference of discriminatory intent. This is so unfair, taking legitimate business language and twisting it into something sinister. Situation keeps getting worse. More former employees start coming forward with complaints. Some current employees are apparently cooperating with Scott's lawyers, providing additional documentation and testimony. Feel like people I trusted are stabbing me in the back. They're mischaracterizing normal human resources decisions as part of some discriminatory scheme. Company's business starts suffering. Several clients express concerns about the negative publicity. Some are threatening to cancel contracts if this doesn't get resolved quickly. Chief Executive Officer calls me into his office looking extremely stressed. Brenda, We need to seriously consider settling this case. The legal costs are mounting and we're losing business. Our insurance company is pushing for resolution. Absolutely not. We can't settle because that would be admitting wrongdoing. This is about principle now. If we give in to these bullying tactics, it sets a terrible precedent. Chief Executive Officer doesn't see it that way. Brenda, this isn't about principle. It's about protecting the company. If we lose this case, the damages could be catastrophic. I need you to work with Michael to explore settlement options. Feel completely unsupported, trying to protect the company from discrimination claims and getting blamed for the whole situation. Over the next few months, discovery process reveals more damaging evidence. Apparently, several employees kept their own records of hiring and promotion meetings, detailed notes about conversations and decisions, emails discussing candidate evaluations, everything taken completely out of context, making normal human resources deliberations sound nefarious. Scott's lawyer, David, starts taking depositions. My turn comes up and he grills me for 8 hours, asking about every hiring decision, every promotion, every termination, trying to find inconsistencies in my explanations, forcing me to defend legitimate business choices as if they were crimes. Ms. Brenda, when you noted that a male candidate might not be collaborative enough, what specifically did you mean? I meant that collaboration is an important skill in our work environment. And how did you assess collaboration compared to technical qualifications? We look at the whole candidate, not just technical skills. But this particular candidate had stronger technical qualifications than the person you hired, correct? Technical qualifications aren't everything. Goes on like this for hours. David picking apart every decision, every comment, every note, taking perfectly reasonable human resources practices and making them sound discriminatory. By the end, I'm exhausted and frustrated. Clear that Scott has prepared extensively for this legal battle. A few weeks later, Michael delivers devastating news. Brenda, I've reviewed the deposition transcripts and additional evidence. Our position has become untenable. The insurance company is threatening to withdraw coverage if we don't settle. Can't believe what I'm hearing. Michael, we haven't done anything wrong. We've been trying to create a fair and inclusive workplace. How is that discriminatory? The law doesn't allow for corrective discrimination, even with good intentions. You can't systematically favor one group over another, regardless of historical context. The evidence shows a clear pattern of gender-based decision-making. This is insane, being punished for trying to address inequality. Settlement negotiations drag on for weeks. Scott's team keeps demanding higher amounts, plus policy changes, plus public admissions of wrongdoing, originally asking for $2 million total, now up to $8 million plus attorney fees. Numbers keep growing as our position weakens. Chief Executive Officer finally reaches breaking point. Brenda, we can't continue fighting this. The legal costs alone are approaching $500,000. We're going to have to settle and move on. Feel completely betrayed. This is exactly what they wanted. They're getting rewarded for making false accusations. Settlement gets finalized at $12 million total. Company has to admit to inadvertent discrimination in employment practices, implement new policies and oversight procedures, provide diversity training for all management staff, plus Scott and the other plaintiffs get individual settlements, money they don't deserve. Aftermath is brutal for the company. $12 million settlement plus legal fees nearly bankrupts us. Several major clients cancel contracts. Stock price plummets. Have to lay off almost half the workforce. Company reputation destroyed in the industry. Chief Executive Officer calls me in for final meeting. Looks like he's aged 5 years in the past few months. Brenda, the board has decided we need to make some changes. Your position as Human Resources Director is being eliminated effective immediately. Of course, they're making me the scapegoat. This whole situation has been a disaster for everyone involved. We think it's best if we part ways. Getting fired for doing my job, for trying to create a fair workplace, for standing up to discrimination. I suppose you're going to give Scott a glowing recommendation too. Maybe invite him back to work here. Chief Executive Officer looks uncomfortable. Brenda, I think it's best if we keep this professional. Try to find another human resources position. Turns out my reputation is completely destroyed in the industry. News about the lawsuit and settlement spread everywhere. Search committees see my name and suddenly decide to go with other candidates. Colleagues who used to respect my work won't even return my phone calls. Financial situation becomes desperate. Legal costs from the settlement weren't covered by insurance. My own legal fees fighting wrongful termination claims. Can't afford my mortgage anymore. Have to sell my house and move to a smaller apartment. Entire life falling apart because I tried to do the right thing. Scott apparently landed a new job within weeks. Senior engineering position at a larger tech company, probably making more money than he ever did before, getting rewarded for filing frivolous lawsuits and destroying a company. Meanwhile, I can't even get interviews for junior human resources positions. Company finally declares bankruptcy 6 months later. Couldn't recover from the settlement costs and lost business. 200 people lose their jobs because of Scott's vindictive legal action. But somehow I'm the one being blamed for everything, as if trying to create an inclusive workplace was the real problem. Still can't understand how everything went so wrong. Followed all proper procedures, made decisions based on legitimate business factors, tried to build a better, more equitable company culture, and got destroyed for it. Scott ruined everything for everyone. His vindictive lawsuit cost hundreds of people their jobs, destroyed a successful company out of pure spite. But people act like he's some kind of hero for standing up to discrimination. Completely backwards world we're living in. Meanwhile, I'm working retail jobs to pay rent, getting paid $15 an hour to fold clothes and ring up customers, watching my entire career disappear because I had principles, because I wasn't willing to perpetuate systemic inequality, because I tried to make real change instead of just talking about it. Think about Scott sometimes, probably sleeping great at night with his big settlement check, while I'm struggling to survive. Never faced any real consequences for destroying so many lives. Legal system rewarded him for his entitlement and vindictiveness. Still don't regret fighting for what's right, even if it cost me everything. Would make the same decisions again. Someone has to stand up to inequality, even if the personal cost is devastating.